There is a grain so nutritious that an empire built temples to honor it, so valuable that 20 million people organized their agriculture around it, and so threatening that when conquistadors arrived in 1519, they did not just ban it. They made growing it punishable by death. This was not about starvation tactics. This was about destroying the soul of a civilization, because amaranth was not just food, it was the blood of the gods made edible. And when Spain outlawed it, they erased a protein source that produced more nutrition per acre than beef. For 500 years, amaranth nearly went extinct, not because it failed to grow, because it succeeded too well at feeding people who refused to be conquered. The grain that sustained an empire became a crime, and by the time the ban lifted, the seed companies had already decided what you would eat instead. This is amaranth, the sacred grain they tried to bury. And the reason it never came back has nothing to do with agriculture. To understand what we lost, you have to understand what amaranth was to the Aztec Empire. This was not a minor crop, this was not a supplemental food. Archaeological records and Spanish colonial documentation reveal that by 1500, the Aztecs cultivated over 200,000 acres of amaranth. That is more land than they dedicated to beans. In tribute payments alone, the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan received over 20,000 tons of amaranth seed annually from conquered territories. The Nahuatl word was huautli. The Spanish called it bledo, and every household, from farmers to nobility, consumed it daily. They popped the seeds like popcorn. They ground them into flour for flatbreads. They boiled the leaves as greens. But the most important preparation was tzoalli. Amaranth seeds were toasted, mixed with honey or maguey syrup, and formed into dough. This dough was not just food, it was the physical manifestation of the divine. During religious ceremonies, priests shaped tzoalli into figures of gods: Huitzilopochtli, the war god; Tlaloc, the rain god. These figures were paraded through the city, worshipped, then broken apart and distributed to the people. Eating the amaranth god was communion. It was how the Aztec connected their bodies to the cosmos. But here is what made the Spanish recoil in horror. In the most sacred ceremonies, the priests mixed the amaranth dough with human blood. Sacrificial blood. The figures they created were not symbolic. They were literal embodiments of sacrifice, death, and rebirth. To the Aztecs, this was the highest form of religious devotion. To the Catholic conquistadors, it was demonic cannibalism. The Spanish had encountered gold, silver, and jade. They had destroyed temples and burned codices. But amaranth represented something they could not tolerate: a food so intertwined with indigenous religion that every meal became an act of worship. The protein question reveals something extraordinary. Modern nutritional analysis shows that amaranth is not just comparable to other grains. It is in a different category entirely. Amaranth contains between 13 and 14% protein by weight. That is equal to wheat, but wheat protein is incomplete. It lacks sufficient lysine, one of the 9 essential amino acids the human body cannot produce on its own. Amaranth contains all 9. It is a complete protein, a rarity in the plant kingdom. The only other grains that achieve this are quinoa, also from the Americas, and buckwheat. Corn, the crop that dominates modern agriculture, contains only 9% protein and is severely deficient in lysine. The Aztec diet of amaranth plus corn provided complete nutrition. Remove the amaranth and you get pellagra, kwashiorkor, and protein deficiency diseases that ravage post-conquest indigenous populations. The yields tell an even more shocking story. Amaranth produces between 1,000 and 3,000 pounds of grain per acre, depending on variety and conditions. Wheat averages 1,000 to 2,000 pounds per acre. But here is the difference: amaranth grows in conditions where wheat fails. It thrives in drought. It tolerates poor soil. It needs no pesticides because almost no insects eat it. Agronomists in the 1970s calculated that amaranth produces more protein per acre than soybeans and more usable protein per acre than cattle grazing. You could feed more people with less water, less labor, and less land. The Aztecs had solved the protein problem 300 years before the Green Revolution claimed to. Beyond protein, amaranth delivers 2 times the calcium of milk per gram, 3 times the fiber of wheat, and higher concentrations of iron, magnesium, and phosphorus than any commonly cultivated grain. The leaves, which the Aztecs ate as vegetables, contain more vitamin A and vitamin C than spinach. This was not just a staple crop, this was nutritional optimization. Then came 1519. Hernan Cortes arrived in Tenochtitlan with 400 soldiers. Within 2 years, he had toppled an empire of 20 million people. The conquest succeeded through a combination of smallpox, superior weapons, and alliances with rival tribes. But holding the territory required something more. Cultural annihilation. The Spanish recognized immediately that they could not govern a population whose every meal reinforced indigenous identity. The Catholic Church, embedded with the Conquistadors, issued decrees. Amaranth cultivation was banned, not discouraged, banned. The penalty for growing amaranth was death. Fields were burned. Seed stores were destroyed. Anyone caught processing amaranth into tzoalli faced execution. Spanish friar Bernardino de Sahagún documented this systematically in his 1600 codex, the Florentine Codex. He wrote that the indigenous people were forced to abandon the grain they called the seed of immortality. He recorded the ceremonies in detail, not to preserve them, but to ensure missionaries could identify and extinguish any remnants. The reasoning was explicit. As long as amaranth existed, the old gods existed. Eating amaranth was eating the body of Huitzilopochtli. It was an act of resistance. So Spain replaced amaranth with wheat. They imported European grains and forced indigenous farmers to cultivate them under the encomienda system. Wheat required different growing techniques, different climates, and yielded less nutrition. But wheat had no connection to the banned religion. By 1600, amaranth had nearly disappeared from central Mexico. It survived only in the most remote mountain villages, places where Spanish authorities could not reach. Small plots, hidden fields, seeds saved in secret. For 300 years, amaranth existed as a ghost crop. Elders remembered it, but colonial law made sure the young never learned to grow it. When Mexico gained independence in 1821, the amaranth ban was never formally lifted. It simply stopped being enforced. But by then, the knowledge was gone. The agricultural infrastructure had shifted entirely to wheat and corn. Amaranth remained a relic food, something grandmothers in rural Oaxaca still cooked, but no one else recognized. By 1970, global amaranth cultivation had dropped to nearly zero. The grain that once covered 200,000 acres survived on fewer than 1,000. Most of those were in the mountains of Puebla and Oaxaca. Seed diversity had collapsed. Entire varieties had gone extinct. The Aztec grain was 3 generations away from disappearing completely. Then in 1975, something unexpected happened. Robert Rodale, the American publisher of Organic Gardening magazine, read a report by agronomist John Robson. Robson had been working in Mexico studying ancient crops. He sent amaranth seeds back to Pennsylvania and ran nutritional tests. The results stunned him. This forgotten grain outperformed everything in the USDA database. Rodale published the findings and launched a campaign to reintroduce amaranth to American agriculture. He called it the crop of the future and the food of the Aztecs. Seed catalogs added it. Universities began trials. By 1980, amaranth was being grown commercially in the United States for the first time in 400 years. But here is where the story fractures. Because amaranth did not return to the mainstream, it returned to health food stores. And the difference matters. Today, amaranth sits on health food store shelves next to chia seeds and quinoa. It costs $20 to $30 per pound. You will find it in the bulk bins at Whole Foods, marketed as an ancient superfood. The packaging emphasizes protein, amino acids, gluten-free. It is positioned as specialty health product, something people buy when they are optimizing their diet or avoiding allergens. Walk into a standard grocery store and you will not see amaranth in the grain aisle. You will not find amaranth flour next to wheat flour. You will not see amaranth bread or amaranth pasta in the regular sections. It occupies the same niche as exotic, expensive, and inaccessible. This is not an accident. It is the result of a food system that consolidated around 4 crops: wheat, corn, rice, and soybeans. These 4 grains receive 90% of global agricultural subsidies. Governments support them. Corporations process them. Supply chains are built around them. Amaranth, no matter how nutritious, does not fit the infrastructure. The machinery that harvests wheat is not optimized for amaranth seeds, which are smaller than poppy seeds. The mills that process wheat flour struggle with amaranth's high oil content. The supply chain that moves millions of tons of corn cannot economically handle a low-volume specialty crop. But there is another problem. Amaranth cannot be patented. It is an open-pollinated heirloom crop. Any farmer can save the seeds and replant them. That means seed companies cannot control it. There is no hybrid amaranth that requires yearly purchases. There is no genetically modified amaranth that comes with licensing agreements. Amaranth is agriculturally free. In an industrial food system built on intellectual property, control, and monoculture, amaranth represents the opposite model. It thrives in diverse small-scale systems. It grows without inputs. It feeds people directly. That is not how modern agriculture makes money. So amaranth remains expensive, not because it is hard to grow, because it is hard to commodify. Meanwhile, the protein problem amaranth solved is now a $30 billion global industry. Protein supplements, protein bars, protein powders. The market exists because people eating wheat and corn-based diets are not getting complete protein. They are paying for lysine in pill form. They are buying amino acid supplements to make up for what their grains lack. Amaranth provided all of it in one seed. The Aztecs never needed supplements. They ate amaranth and corn together, and their diet was complete. But that knowledge was buried when Spain burned the fields. There is one more layer to this. Amaranth is not just about nutrition. It is about resilience. Climate scientists project that wheat and corn yields will decline as temperatures rise and water becomes scarce. Both crops are highly vulnerable to drought. Amaranth is not. It evolved in the highlands of Mexico and Central America, where rainfall is unpredictable. Amaranth uses a C4 photosynthetic pathway, the same system that makes corn efficient in heat. But unlike corn, amaranth needs only half the water. Studies from the International Center for Tropical Agriculture show that amaranth maintains yields in conditions where wheat production drops by 50%. We are engineering drought-resistant crops in laboratories, spending billions on genetic modification. Meanwhile, a grain that already solves the problem grows freely, ignored. If this vault opened something for you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every like and every share helps preserve the knowledge they tried to bury. The grain that fed an empire still grows. It still yields. It still delivers complete protein per acre. The Spanish tried to kill it. Industrial agriculture tried to forget it. But Amaranth never needed permission to survive. It just needed someone to remember. The next vault opened soon.